seen Bloom's book. I should
Yeah.
start the show though by saying welcome. This is Otherworldly, the Changing Times, Changing Worlds Wednesday show. And tonight the topic is going to be a discussion of runes in the panel format, which means we're going to be discussing it. I'm not going to be delivering the wisdom of the runes as an expert. I'm going to say we are a bunch of people, many of whom know a good deal about the runes. I know at least a couple of us work with them intensively. And that does not necessarily mean that what we know is going to be true for everybody. The runes came about 2,000 years ago, and they have been in constant use since then. Although I was going to say this last century, but in the 20th century, they got a huge resurgence with Ralph Bloom's book, where he decided that he was going to share it. It got an earlier push mid-century when Tolkien put runes, and people were like, "Oh, aren't these cool looking?" And then Ralph Bloom put his out along with his little cast square pebbles, which when they hit the pagan community started to be used by many of the pagans as if they were using tarot cards. So you suddenly got reversals and mercury runes and a lot of things that never existed before then because it just wasn't part of the way runes were used.
Also remember, Bloom started out as an astrologer, and he did a lot of what he did was in the viewpoint of, well, maybe I can fit them into the houses.
Yeah.
Too.
And I can remember archaeologically, this is coming from my SCA background. It's a beautiful carved high seat. Let's say we would call it a throne lower down in Europe, and it has on the four sides of the carved chair 3 of the astrological signs on each side. And this was from the Viking period. So this is a Renaissance. This is one of those wonderful things that the Victorians dug up and then drew wonderful engravings of, and then of course had no ability to preserve wood, and it immediately rotted and it no longer exists. So, but we do have their cool pictures of them. On the other hand, we still have the pictures of Saxon crowns, which are rings with pointy Van Dyke shaped pieces, which were actually the fittings from decorative formal ale buckets, which since the wood rotted away and all they had left was these 8-inch diameter circle and the pointy things, they said, "Oh, it must be a crown." so let's just say that they did the best they could at the time, and interpretations will change as we learn more. And
somehow the idea of somebody's crown being an ale bucket seems rather appropriate.
Well, yeah, given what we've known about the behavior of a lot of monarchs, in the meantime, I have figured out that Jen just indicated she found my copy of the Book of Runes. This is like one of the originals from like 1 million years ago, which I may go out and fetch in case I want to quote from it, because even beyond the basic runes, there was a great deal about it that I found fascinating. And I also now, having studied other rune sites and opinions, have concluded it's a very, very modern interpretation of the entire cycle of runes in a way that necessarily wasn't done before. But in the meantime, this is one of the runes from that's my original set.
10th anniversary edition.
Yep.
So in the what, Jen?
I said 10th anniversary edition.
Okay, so I was a little late to the game.
Yeah, I remember when it came out. And it was exciting, but then I got annoyed. It was like when Buckland came out with Sachs Wicca, and he had, and it was a variety of Wicca in which you would, okay, and this is the athame for Sachs Wicca, and this is your Sachs, and it has a the athame is the two-sided blade, and I was like, the Sachs was famous for having a one sharp side.
Yes,
And
that's
Yeah.
the traditional phone call.
Yeah.
phone call, and my son my secretary will take care of that.
Well,
I knew how to,
unfortunately, Raymond has passed, so that you're not going to be able to take him to task for that. I'm sure somewhere's out in the other world he's saying, "Oops, yeah, I really did blow it, didn't I?"
I told him a while ago, and
Well, that's what terrifies me most about the afterlife is the prospect that somebody will be sitting there with this incredibly long scroll calling to me to account for all the things I managed to get wrong in spite of all the evidence to the contrary. And that's one of the reasons I want to live forever.
And I'm sure that poor Uncle Bucky is
Yep.
dealing with this.
Yes, I'm sure he is.
but the thing is that one thing I do want to say as sort of an expert is that if not expert, at least experienced, is from at current information, or as current as my information is, we have approximately 24 examples of this runes being used for magic, and approximately 3 examples of runes being used for divination. So while it is a wonderful divination system, it's also used for magic. It was probably used for magic more, unless we have a really biased record in what has come down to us, which is entirely possible.
Yeah.
I actually,
We never know what
But
we
it
haven't
was-
found.
I did want to
No,
add,
and I do remember a comment in the Blum book that commented that runes were commonly used for entirely practical purposes, quote, such as getting a cow out of a bog, unquote.
well, I think that
That's-
I would be remiss in not mentioning what Jane would tell us, which is their first use was as labels.
Mhm.
And they were used for essentially baggage tags and labels on things saying, this is mine. And how far does it take it when you're putting scratching, this is my brooch, on your brooch, to going, Thor blast anyone who takes so-and-so's brooch.
Mhm.
It suddenly becomes a magic use.
Mhm.
And that it's not a huge step. But when it comes down to, and I'm going to recommend the book Mason McLeod's Runic Amulet, Magical Amulets and Inscriptions, which is now pretty old too. But these two people decided they were going to now that there were computers, they were going to try and collect all the magical inscriptions.
Mm.
Could you put that in the chat?
What?
Could you put that in the chat?
Yeah, if we can get a link for that, that would be splendid.
Idea, and I will do that. And so there's a lot of really good ones in it, and they have, but Jane would say at first it was used for writing, and it certainly was used for writing. And gee, what a surprise! Over 2 millennia, the form of the alphabet, or in this case, the Futhark, changed. So the
And
runes
tarot cards were used for playing games.
first,
Mhm.
but first, Jane uses the set of 18, and I use the set of the Saxon 24. But
And I use a 32 rune set.
I add in some extra ones, so what they now call the Anglo-Saxon Futhark, is is actually a collection that was made in the Middle Ages of assorted runes when they collected runes that were from various alphabets, because whatever we may like or not like about them, they were very scholarly and they loved written stuff, and they tried to collect things, and they loved alphabets. Part of the new runes that they put in when the Anglo-Saxons hit, when the Roman taught Christians hit England and decided they were going to learn the Futhark, is they discovered they couldn't write it in Latin. And so they had to add a couple more figures, write in Latin, and you get magical things like the Sator Aripanet Opera Rotas square, which is a magical square used to protect lightning and things like that. And that's graffiti on the walls in Pompeii, and it's the same thing written in runic in Iceland. You know, let's face it, if there's a little bit of magic that people want to work with, that they're gonna keep passing it on to each other. And now, of course, we have computerized a lot of the things that were in my books that I read in the 70s and 80s were, oh, this is just gibberish. It's like, no, it turns out it's an Irish dialect, which we don't all know all the languages, but now the computers will detect them for us. So this is kind of cool, but excuse me while I look up, put that on.
Excuse me while I shift.
I was actually hoping I could get Erica to share some of what she had, because she and I were chatting earlier today about how this was grown up. She grew up with runes from the, I think she said Romula or Lithuanian background. Are you still there, Erica? Can you talk to us for a minute while I look up that book?
Well, we have a chat response.
Yeah, chat root. I used to communicate with the god Jah.
Hi, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Yes,
Good.
we can.
Oh,
Yes,
hi
there you
everyone.
are.
I have a bad sinus infection, so
Oh.
I'm on amoxicillin, so I really can't talk, but I can type. But what I wanted to say is in Lithuanian Remuva and also in Sami, which is Nordic, like northern Norway.
Indigenous peoples.
Yeah, we use, we would take our saliva, our spit, and spit on our finger, and we would put a rune on our left wrist, just with our saliva. And we would use, that was like a big thing that we do. And that's to bless ourselves and also to bind our magic with our intent with our magic to commune, because everything has to do with the earth and in the land. That's what the Sami people did. Everything is the land and the earth. Like a lot of people think it's the alphabet, it's like the tarot. It is nothing like the tarot. That's all new age stuff, and I'm not going to say it's wrong, but it's wrong. It has to do with bind runes, and it's like a kind of like a magical language, but other magical people would read it and see it, like they would carve the runes in stones or on trees, and other people would see it and they would know this was a sacred site. I don't know if I'm making any sense, but
Well,
Actually,
you
you're
actually
making
are.
perfect sense.
Yes, and I just went and looked up Lithuania to place it on the map, because my father's ancestors are Slovak. And that's a little farther down in Eastern Europe, but then you go up to the Nordic lands with it. And
Yeah, on the Baltic Sea where,
it
all
does-
the amber
well,
comes from.
Then I saw Baltic. I said, I have to look this up because, okay, it's the same neighborhood for all that nobody ever went more than 10 miles from home. But
Well,
Yeah, what
Lithuania
you're
used to occupy mostly all of Europe at one time. Lithuania is
Oh, yeah.
the oldest written language, older than Sanskrit. And this Remuva, which is the religion, it started with the Vedic. It's as old as the Vedics.
it's that
Um,
old.
That
Well, the
old,
Vedic
yeah.
goes back a long ways.
Yeah, yeah. So they say that the Lithuanians
How did the
originally had
Vedic
come
get-
from
well,
India. That's
I
like a
was about
whole
to say
other
that the
topic.
Vedic
though.
is, yeah, and the Vedic, I'm saying, how did it get up there? But wait a minute, is it really that far away?
It is a migrational pattern.
No,
Yeah.
okay.
If you look on YouTube and
Go back
put in
over
Remuva,
40,000 years, you will see the Vedic migration, and it also has linguistic context as well.
Okay,
Yeah,
and the linguist, yeah, and these
Aryan,
migration patterns
like the
and the growth of
Iranians.
languages.
Yeah,
Mhm.
very, very old, ancient. And we had the runes before the Scandinavians had the runes,
Mhm.
which are very
So how
similar.
far back
Steal
were
them from
there?
somewheres.
Oh, 10,000
Well,
years
yeah.
ago. Caveman days, thousands of years ago.
I do
Well,
have a
2000
question. You're talking about using saliva
Yeah.
to paint the runes on your body for magical use.
Yeah,
Hmm.
usually
have
it's your
seen-
left wrist.
Okay, I have
Left.
been recently working with, in addition to Runewalder, which I'll let Chipakan talk about because she
Right.
knows this better than I do,
Uh-huh.
but the practice of taking a specific rune and painting it either on your forehead or
Mhm.
another part of your body.
Yep.
Either just inscribing it with your will or using something else. Could you talk a little bit more about using bodily fluids and
Well, yeah,
what
'cause-
that
Oh,
what
sure. Yeah,
how
we use
that empowers it more or less than just using your will?
it
Striping
empowers it
runes with
more
blood is
because
also
you're
a big
connecting.
deal.
We use so you know about blutes, right?
Mhm.
Blutes or
Mhm.
blots. I don't know how you say them.
Yes.
Blots.
Either way,
Yes.
actually.
Okay.
Blooding them.
And,
Or redding them is the, as it
and
says in the Havamal.
yeah, in the Havanalia, and you use blood. We would use, being a woman, we would use our menstrual blood, and we would pour that on the rocks. We'd have a sacred rock, that's where you pour the blood. We would take the blood, I usually put Isa on my forehead, it looks like just like an L, small L, Isa. And
Isa?
I put that on my forehead, or I'd put it on my saliva, and I put it on my left wrist. That's my to-go rune. Everybody has like their own rune that they connect with.
Okay, I'm going to butt in here again.
Uh-huh.
So what happens with this practice when you are like me, you are a crone and you're postmenopausal,
Aha.
and you no longer have blood?
You all
do what
still
we
have
guys
blood,
do.
right?
You get
Well, you
yourself a
could-
diabetic.
Well, yeah, I have
You get a
blood, but I
diabetic.
ain't gonna slit my wrist for it.
No, you don't have to. You hide yourself to the drugstore. You get a diabetic lancet, or that we use to test our blood. We diabetics use to test
Oh,
our blood.
honey,
You prick your
I am
finger.
a sheep farmer. I've got syringes and needles, and I can do.
Fine.
Oh, Lord.
No, you
The
could
dif-
use
the
Well,
difference
just
is
I
your
people
haven't
don't look
lo-
askance when I pull it out and prick my finger when I'm doing something in public.
Right.
Yeah, you don't
But
have to
I
use
have an
your blood.
off-topic
You can use
question
your
here,
urine.
very much related here.
'Cause I'm
Isn't-
postmenopausal too. I'm 57. my fun days are over. No, actually, my fun days are good now.
Yeah, I was
Don't
gonna
have
say,
to
Well,
the
worry
yeah,
fun
you
about
don't have
getting
anything to
days
worry
are
about.
over. The fun is still around.
Yeah,
But-
you use
Yeah, the
use your
fun comes
urine.
without consequences.
Yeah.
Right,
Yeah.
and I keep looking at Aisling, and I assume that this is an avatar and not the real self. But who the hell is your hairstylist?
You're talking to me?
Yeah.
Oh, with all
I'm
the
sitting here-
feathers.
Oh,
What-
is
that
a
feathers, or is that a garden on
lovely
your head?
a lovely head wreath that I acquired at Maryland Ren Fair. And okay, so here's what I really look like.
Okay.
And I do have red hair that I can go, woo!
Oh, okay. But I looked at that. and
Now
said,
you know
"Oh,
what I
wow,
look like."
it."
All right,
Yeah,
I'll
well,
see.
That's
This is
fine.
But I looked at that and I said, I
this
gotta
is
know
what
where
I
that
look
came
like
from.
sick.
Now
well,
you
this
know
is-
who I really look like.
I don't have any wigs or wreaths to wear. This is what I look like. But I looked at that and I said, oh God, who's your stylist?
Realize
My
it.
stylist was the vendor of the Ren Fair wreath. And now we will
Okay, yeah, I'll buy that.
Okay. That was a sidetrack.
now I
there.
will bail out of this and we won't take this on a sidebar anymore.
Anyway, so back,
Nope, but that's fine. I just had to know. Meanwhile, back at the
Ask
room.
for.
allow me to
Yeah,
say
I had 2 or 3 comments coming to me like, where'd you get this?
that's what that is for, okay? But let's talk about runes because we are using them. I think
Mhm.
a lot of us use them. As mentioned earlier, I use and teach Runewalder, which was developed in 2004. But it was developed by somebody who was a Reiki master and a rune master, and he was essentially combining them to create this system.
Mm,
Reiki has this wonderful system where you basically inscribe or imagine with your will a symbol, and gets the power flowing, gets the key flowing.
right.
Reiki is and it directs the key. Reiki has a way of sending it to somebody distant if they need healing. So he wanted to, he found, because he used runes, that he was using, and the name is Rodney Cox, and it's Runewalder, and I'll put that in the chat. And psychic stuff, healing Runewalder. Yes, they're on my, I have a bunch of this on my website.
Yeah, we noticed that.
So, but if you are healing a burn, you'd like to take some of that is energy and put it into the burn, as well as the healing energy. If you are doing, if you want to send something distantly. So he combined, he was in the ADF, the Andrak Fane, he's a druid. And so he went into a trance and talked to Odin and said, give me something I can use instead of the Japanese Usui symbols for Reiki, and came up with these symbols, which are conveniently and probably not without surprises, all straight lines and circles that he can do on his computer. So, but it makes them very easy for us to look at these shapes and use them along with the runes to direct what we want to do. And if you need to do Runewalder, if you want to learn it, I'll talk until you don't want to hear it anymore. But it's
Well, once again, Chipicon, if we're actually having changing times, changing worlds physically this year, why don't we teach it again?
Yeah, I've taught it almost every year at Changing Times, Changing
And when
Worlds.
you don't, I do.
Because it's useful, because in the world we're living in now, the more people who can heal, the more ways we have to heal each other and ourselves, the better off we are, because there's a lot of negative influences, little, whether it's radiation, whether it's substances, whether it's negative energy, we have a lot of reasons for getting sick, and the more ways we have to heal, the better off we're going to be. So I like it. I have personally used the symbol for stopping migraines for people I didn't even know who it was. Somebody would come to me and say, can you do this? My friend is hiding in her tent with a migraine, and I would do the rune folder, which consists of, I do that, this, sending it to, it said you concentrate on your friend and where they are, send it through their friend to them, and that, and then seal the working, and that, what I just did stops a migraine. And if anybody either has migraines or knows somebody who has migraines, you know how horrible, how debilitating a migraine can be. And my sister used to, when she found out I could do this, would call me up and say, I've got a migraine coming, can you do that thing you do? And it worked for about 6 months, and then it stopped working. I believe the reason that it stopped working is because the gods are very big on, we would like you to learn what the cause is behind it, and you with the cause, not with just, no, they don't want us to suffer, but the point of pain is to draw your attention. The body saying, pay attention. And the more the pain is, it means pay attention. Something is seriously wrong. You shouldn't be doing this. So I think the gods are very big on saying, no, we're not going to just make the pain go away. It's like putting tape over your dashboard warning lights. It's like,
you need God to help those who help themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's the point.
But it does work, and I've seen it do some really amazing things. So it's a good thing.
The rune halter things are really great. I had an experience right after I took the class with Chipicon. It was in the clan where I went out on my front porch in the morning and did my usual thing where I took my boots, my big tall rubber boots, and shook them out to make sure that there weren't any bugs and stuff in them. And I shoved my foot in, and lo and behold, because it was mid to late October, there was a sleeping European hornet in my boot. And my heel slammed, and it didn't shake out. It was clinging to the inside of the boot. And holy crap, getting stung by a European hornet on your heel on the bottom of your foot.
Ow.
Is not. And about 2 hours later, I went, there's got to be something we can do with rune Valder. And I stuck a post up, and somebody came up with, and I used Uruz, and I can't remember if I used Isa or Hagalat, but I think I used Lagos to wash it away, along with Uruz. And within 30 seconds, the pain was gone. The swelling stopped. I was like, yes.
Well, this is hugely interesting. I really want to learn Rune Valder now, because the thing that most appealed to me about Reiki when I did it was this incredible serenity that comes from knowing you're channeling an energy that obeys the first law of medicine, first do no harm.
Yes.
And that however misguided your diagnosis is, the energy will go where it is needed.
Now, I will also say that I'm also a Reiki master.
We took
I'm not sure whether it was the combination, but all I can say is, Reiki itself, adding Runewalder to target that specific thing
Right.
kicked it
Well,
over.
mhm.
And
Well, we were kind of pleased and fortunate because just by happenstance in around 1995 or thereabouts, we made contact with a local Reiki master who was one of the infamous rogue masters who disagreed with Dr. Usui that Americans were money pigs and therefore needed to pay $10,000 for an attunement.
Hmm.
And she gave Jen and I both attunements, and then she admitted later on she'd made a mistake. Gave us a master's attunement when she meant to
Level
give us the
2.
first one. Right.
Oops.
And which explains why I was vibrating for almost a week. But I really adored more than anything else the idea that you couldn't hurt somebody with Reiki. That first do no harm was automatically enforced. And even if you didn't know what was really wrong, well, this is a classic case of you do the Reiki and the person gets what they need, not what they want.
Mm-hmm.
But to combine that with something else that adds power and flexibility to it, all right, I'm interested.
Understand this though, Reiki, Runewalder, you can do.
Runes aren't safe.
runes,
Well,
you
no,
can
the minute-
do what you will, and they are not guaranteed not to harm.
No, and that is the one thing that makes me cautious, because that was one of the nice things about Reiki, was that if you did the pure form of it, it would either work or it wouldn't, but you couldn't hurt anybody with it. And I don't know
Well-
any other healing system that can claim that.
Well, I'm going to go back on that one and use the example of the gentleman who was working in the woods and accidentally clipped off a finger. But having learned Reiki, he grabbed his finger, threw it in the cooler chest, got in his truck, and went straight to the nearest hospital, which was 15 or 20 minutes away, doing Reiki on his hands with hands on the steering wheel, Reikiing severed stump, and ran into the emergency room and said, "Look here, I want my finger reattached. It happened 20 minutes ago." And they said, "Don't bullshit us. We're doctors. This is at least 3 or 4 days healing on
Oh, really?
because we can't reattach it because there's no place to reattach because because it's healed for 3 or 4 days." So it just happened to me. Look at the fingers. It was just
Okay, yeah.
It's just
That would be a
so,
mess with your
yeah,
head moment.
my sister, my daughter clipped off her finger. Not much, just about that much.
That's still too much.
And well, she was chopping kindling once, and I Reiki'd it every day, and it completely grew back. It was completely whole. The nail was fine. It was not deformed. It totally grew back. Reiki is wonderful. It stops the pain. It heals the tissue. It's a great thing. But as we learned in our early discussions during Runewalder, back when it was on Yahoo and there was a lot of good chats going on, some people said, when you're doing the healing, my mother's noticed that she could feel it going from across the room. And people who had studied color started working that in with theirs. And so they were saying, yes, well, how do we use different colors with the runes? Because traditionally, because of the tradition of putting your blood into a carved rune, which puts your key, your personal energy into the object that you are empowering, they are traditionally red. And so therefore people will use red ink or dragon's blood or some other bodily fluid, your spit or your menstrual blood or whatever, will put your personal into the working, into the object. And so people will do that. So they traditionally think of runes as red when they're empowered. But Is, we immediately started to say, no, that should be either white or maybe blue, because Is is ice. And so as many people worked with it and communicated with each other, we learned to integrate color theory with it. We have learned to do, when in the early part of the 20th century, when Armenian runes were being studied and developed, which then were highly abused by the Third Reich, they came up with stav, or is what they call runic yoga, where you put your body in the shape of various runes, and you might to make that, to bring that particular rune's energy into it, which I've known people who use it and find it really works for them. I think it looks silly, and so I don't use it because it probably wouldn't work well for me. But one of the things I think is important is the runes are what they are. What is going to be, or uruz, or whichever pronunciation or name you give it, the second rune is going to be for healing. The third rune, thirst, the Anglo-Saxon monks renamed Thurs, which was the word for the parents of the gods, what would have been the Titans to the Olympians, the earlier gods, the elder gods, who really don't care about people. And they renamed it Thorn and used it as a sign of Christ's suffering, because they had to Christianize the runes in order that they could use them. So at every point, we will be reusing them. At this point in history, at this decade, we are dealing with Erica, and you can correct me if I got the story wrong, but Erica got kicked out, got put in Facebook jail because she put algaes, a protective rune, up on her page. And they said, oh, this is going against community standards, so you can't post for 24 hours. Excuse me, just because it's runic does not mean it's a white supremacist hate sign. But they've got it down there in their little Facebook algorithm book. Runes belong to white supremacists, and therefore they're all evil, and anybody who uses them must be evil. It's like, God.
Yeah, I went on the, where you can deny it, accept their decision or deny it. So I denied it because, it's part of my religion. I mean, it's okay for Christians to put angels with wings, but hey, the Hell's Angels biker group, who were murderers, they had angels, right? Wouldn't that be considered like a white supremacist group, or, you know what I mean? So this is such a double standard. I'm not a white supremacist.
Oh, yeah.
No.
Well, Hell's Angels are fun too, because they derived out of a group of World War II PTSD vets called the Pissed Off Bastards, who then evolved into that. So they have that, but yeah, it is.
Yeah, but
symbols.
Runes are magical symbols. Like the Lithuanian, we have our Saulė, which is our goddess, the sun. And it's the wheel, the sun wheel or the pinwheel, whatever you want to call it. It looks like a windmill, like a swastika, I guess.
Yeah.
But it's not a swastika. It has more arms on it. And you know what I mean? And there's many different forms of it.
Right.
But yet, God
wheel
forbid
of
you
the
post
year.
that on Facebook.
It's a wheel of the year.
Yes.
I mean,
But-
even the basic swastika comes in two versions depending on which way the arms swing. But
Yes.
I know
Yeah,
that we've
that.
come down to this incredibly dumbass society where algorithms rule everything. Now, my attitude is that given what the Nazis did to the swastika, which was a sacred symbol, the Native Americans, a whole crap load of other people, that
Yeah,
we ought to use it everywhere. Swamp the algorithm. Make them ban us all. I mean, Facebook is on a downturn because people are tired of their politics, among 1,000 other things.
But
And
how many of us versus how many of the others? Are we 1/3, 1/2? We are not
probably not even a
3/4.
tenth.
Yeah,
I've
we are
always
not,
worked on the-
we do not have the volume to overwhelm and do it.
Well,
We
if I'm the one,
we cannot create the tidal wave that has to happen.
no, we don't need a tidal wave. What we need is endless irritation. Never let them get a good night's sleep because they're always dealing with this noisy minority. I mean, I don't care if there's 10 tires on the highway. If I'm one now, I've got one of those tires. So, we can look at that, and it's a matter of deciding. This is like saying, oh, I'm not going to vote for him. He can't win. Screw that. I'm going to vote for what I believe in. And if it means, and I pick my fights. I decide, is this going to be worth the investment in the hassle it's going to cause? And if basically, if Facebook bans me, I don't really care. So if I decide I need to post a symbol or say something that offends the Zuckerberg god, too bad. So I just refuse to be bound by them, because that's when you lose your freedom, is when these people tell you what you can and cannot do. They can lock me in a dark cell with no food or drink, but they haven't imprisoned me in a very important way. So that's where my head's at. Maybe this is just, I've always noticed that once a man gets to be a certain age, he reaches a state of grace where he doesn't really give a rat's ass what anybody thinks of him anymore. And suddenly these people become powerful because they have what it takes to go out and say, well, it's like I always said, what's a real man? A real man does what needs to be done and does what's right. And Erica has her hand up.
Erica? I'm gonna unmute Erica. Erica, did you have something that you or were you applauding?
Well, maybe that was
Somehow I
applause.
got muted.
Okay.
Oh, I was
I'm-
applauding. I'm
Oh,
not
you
with
were
the
applause.
Zoom.
Thank you.
I
No
love
applause,
you,
just-
Griffin Brook.
Thank
You are
you.
awesome.
I also-
Yes, I am also hitting an age where, yeah, I am unfortunately still trying to stay employed.
That's
And I can't jump my butt out there and go, hello, here I am.
Mhm.
But on the other hand, yes. And yeah, I'm a child of the 60s and 70s.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah.
Hey, I was born 1960 right
Get
here.
rebel.
Not-
1964.
On campus. On campus.
God, children.
1950 here.
Oh boy.
So
Okay,
Sorry,
1950 is your birthday? I'm
well,
only
April 3rd,
1955. So, all right.
All right.
All right, so anyway, that's where I'm at. And as I say, I am disabled, unemployed, unemployable. And therefore, unless I manage to say something that pisses off the Social Security Administration to the point where they cut off my benefit, I don't have to care about my income. As
Yes,
long as I fill out the right forms.
but
I
that
get
is
my-
like without any food or drink, but taking away the room as well.
Well,
This-
I am also a battler of bureaucracy and have successfully managed to get every benefit we can get and keep our food stamps coming. So in spite of all the efforts to squash people like us, we still have enough to eat and barely enough to live on. So take that.
Yeah, the thing is that we have to remember, I once told Isaac Bonewitz at one of his workshops, if a Christian shoe store wants to put a cross up in their store so that Christians who like that kind of thing will come to their store instead of somebody else's, why can't pagans? Yes, well, the thing is that if you have a shoe store and you're pagan, you put up a pentagram, you may have every pagan in the entire tri-state area coming to your shoe store, but if you lose the Christians, you're still going to go out of business and end up in another pagan on welfare.
Pretty
You
much.
can't necessarily.
And
That's why-
basically, if
that's
people,
who already
We do
have to-
have to be open. We have to just go, business is business. Religion is religion, and the two
Keep the
not
two,
the same.
yeah, keep the two damn things
I have
separate.
a farm, I have a business in addition to my day job. And yes, I cannot put myself up at the local farmers market as the pagan friendly business.
right.
Yeah,
And if your customers
absolutely.
say, may Jesus bring love to your heart today, you say, blessed be, you know?
Yeah,
but I do want to jump back to runes a little bit,
Yes,
because
please.
aspect
Please.
we're starting to get into and didn't quite cover, which is that the runes, unlike Reiki and several other things, if you are, the runes do what they're going to do. Each rune is going to do what it does. You do use your intent, as with almost any kind of magic, to say what aspect of the rune you're pushing into the situation. For instance, lagu, for goodness sakes, water. Is there a symbol that has more aspects than water? There, it can be crashing waves, it can be still waters, it can be a shallow reflective puddle, it can be something that you can see immediately, it can be
It can be a graceful, lovely shower that is
I
much
was just
needed on
thinking-
your crops.
nourishing
Yeah.
rainfall.
but you cannot, or it can be a monsoon that's going to blow everything over. You have to use your intent to say what aspect of water you are talking. It can be purifying, it can be dissolving, water is just a huge multi-level symbol.
Well,
Cleansing
yeah, if
can
you
be
think about
everything
it
from get
that
this
way,
sweat off my skin to let's wipe clean the entire land.
Not the same as
But-
Gifu, it's the same as Ken. You cannot use them, you cannot say, well, when I was growing up, this is what I was taught that it meant. Well, yeah, you may have been, and you may be dipping into some aspect of that symbol that your family uses that other people don't. But at the same time, the runes are going to do what they're going to do. The runes are what they are, and you can't force them, as is any symbol. And that's one of the things one of the few things I liked about the book, The Golden Compass. They talked about the levels of symbolism and how something that is a symbol this level, and then it becomes symbols for that further down, and then it gets deeper and deeper, and you get levels of symbolism. That's true, but you need to learn what the symbols are. So if something is a symbol for something in one culture and a symbol for something in another culture, which you see a lot of in colors.
yeah. Well, I suddenly, when you were talking
Also,
about
I mean,
lagu,
it's not just lagus. You need to look at every rune and go, is it community or my personal property, or what is it?
Well, I was thinking in terms
Everything,
of,
and in a given working, it can mean different things. I can go, I want to do my personal property. Or I can go my community's property and the boundaries around that. You have to look at it. And then you just gotta go for what you can go for and trust. But with magick and direction and will, you can take certain aspects of a given rune and direct that particular one in a magical way with sufficient will and coordination with all the other pieces to do what you need to do magically. I mean, I am not saying this very well. I'm speaking off the cuff, but
Yeah. It's easier when you prepared workshop.
well, I was wondering, you think about runes and their implications, what manifestation of Lagus was the Fukushima to tsunami? Because I can't see them as separate.
That's a good point.
I'd say Lagus plus Hagals. Water plus disruption.
Really
yeah, what there were lots of things that got out of balance, really bad stuff.
So that's the fear death by water combination.
Also,
That just hit that one, whatever it happened to manifest through Lagus.
but you look at it and you're going to say what another aspect of water is, it has a tendency to combine things that don't otherwise combine, which may not be good all the time. I mean, sometimes it's a good way of blending things. Sometimes it's not what you want at all.
Yeah.
So sometimes you
Well,
want to pull the ingredients together gently, and sometimes you want to whip them.
So sometimes you can go, the good thing is that Lagus isn't something that most of us rely on a lot.
well,
yes,
it does.
it is.
Water is one of the most universal solvents in the world.
Yes,
So
it is.
You talk about combining power, Chipicon. I don't think there's anything that combine more things than Lagus does. Well, now we have more to chew on about what the runes do and what they
Actually,
mean.
air. I will argue air.
Okay.
I'm not sure it
Defend your position.
does not tend to soften things and make them want to mix the way water does.
No, it doesn't. But air takes into its thing how it utilizes everything. Air incorporates earth. Air incorporates water. Air incorporates everything.
If there is energy
you
to
got
all
fire.
things, air
And it incorporates
can pass
fire.
with that.
Fire
Yes.
consumes it when it incorporates it, but
Yeah.
air is the one thing that reaches out and touches everything.
Well, I
It
find this
also
terribly.
incorporates intellect that reaches out and says, how do I coordinate these other elements, including how do we incorporate the fifth element spirit?
What is it that
Air.
carries our words to others? Air.
Yeah.
Air
Well, this is a hot
communicates.
tick-
Air
This is
grabs.
a hot
Air,
ticket for me.
air
This is
is
a hot
the
ticket, yeah.
piece.
Okay, you know what I'm going to say on that one? I'm going to say we got to do a show discussing the elements because that's
Yes,
I
Yeah.
think
you
we do
do.
because we
That's
just
a-
landed on one of my hot buttons here because in recent discussions we've determined that my element is air, and you talk about air and intellect. Well, hi, there I am.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I
and
think that's a splendid
I
idea.
freely admit I am an air and fire person.
Yeah. I'm water and fire.
Bottom line is I have been
Mhm.
called air and fire. Holy crap.
Yeah. But anyway, we are now closing in on 9, so I'm
Yep.
going trying to, did anyone have any questions or points that they were hoping would be brought up in this discussion?
Well-
We certainly didn't know where this
Well-
was going, did we?
I
But
do
I
have
would actually
what,
like to raise one point because since my one rune set is the 10th anniversary Blum book and rune set. Are there any legitimate objections to using that as opposed to some other rune set or some other book or some other teaching? Because I know that his was a sort of a composite Futhark.
It
And
was? Now,
I-
I want to
Mhm.
ask, I know that Erica had mentioned that her, when she learned it as a small child, they had, did you say pebbles or beads or something? It sounded like there were
Yeah,
small
I
pieces.
don't know if you can see them, but these are
that's one of your rune stones?
sliced reindeer antlers from
Okay.
Ooh.
northern
Oh,
Norway.
That's
how
traditional,
natural
yeah.
can you get?
And
Pull
they're
it back
burnt.
a
Ooh. Oh, there I
I
see
don't know
it.
if you can see it because
The light is making.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
you
That's
caught it
better.
at the end there.
Sliced
That's
antlers,
perfect.
antlers are a very traditional
Yeah.
form.
Okay, well, Odin would approve, I assume.
yeah,
That's
But-
awesome.
I've always felt that
I
the
do-
runes do better with wood, antler, bone, anything that is that was once growing. Other people like to
Okay.
use the ceramic or they carve it into stones.
well, the
I don't.
salmon. Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
Oh, go ahead.
Go, Eric. It's your turn right now, Eric.
Oh, my
Go.
turn. Oh,
Ha!
I was gonna say the antler, reindeer antler is sacred to the Sami people because the
Oh, well,
reindeer
yeah.
is the goddess, you would say, of the supreme goddess of the Nordic world.
And
Um,
they are symbiotic
the-
with the reindeer.
The
Oh,
phoen-
absolutely.
Yes, that's their life. My friend Nadia is a Sami and she has reindeer. And they're actually on an island now because they bring them to
Awesome.
an island up to pasture for the winter.
Hmm.
And the reindeer is their life. It's like the Native
Mhm.
Americans, the white-tailed deer or the buffalo,
Oh, yeah.
clothing, you build your house out of it. But,
Yep.
and
And they
the-
thrive because you take care of them.
Yeah.
well,
And
I-
they're
A question would be
you
that
sleep with
if
your
you're
runes.
not in the Nordic place and cannot do this, if you're here in the US and you hunt
Nice Star Wars.
and you have deer, is that maybe a suitable substitute?
I could see why
For-
not. See, this is,
I
would
mean,
agree.
I have deer antler that I have hunted. Yes, I do hunt.
Fair.
I have
Mhm.
brought them in. I kill them. I use it. Sacred ways. They are sacred.
mhm.
It is a place that I put on the kill. I use the body. We eat the meat. I keep the pelt. I do whatever I can do
Mhm.
I use it.
Utilize the
all.
whole animal.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, and my attitude towards hunters has taken an uptick over the last few years as I learn more and more how many hunters who really only hunt for sport nonetheless take pains to see that the animal is properly disposed of. They donate the meat, they donate, whatever and I would say
And
that
there is, yes, there are programs to go, hey, I can go as a hunter, I can take the body and donate the meat to
Mhm.
Hunters for the Hungry, for instance.
right.
In Virginia, we
And-
have a thing, but how many hunters don't do that?
Well, I don't know.
I
and
had
that's
a
why it's
very
like-
bad. There
Yeah,
are
yeah.
trophy hunters that where I used to live. One of my 4-H kids came to me and said, "We found these deer bodies lying along the creek bed without their heads.
Yeah.
Is that
Yeah,
like witchcraft?" I went, "No,
No, that's rotten hunters
That's
that
murder.
wanted a trophy. Well,
That's
these
called a
antlers,
trophy hunter."
reindeer,
People who grew up with
excuse
convenience
me,
foods from grocery
reindeer
stores.
shed their antlers. They're not like white-tailed deer. The male
White-tailed deer
and the-
has shed their antlers. Yes, they do.
Yes.
Well, the male
Well-
and the female reindeer both grow antlers. And they
Ah,
both shed their
Yeah.
antlers. So that's why the misconception, they always think like Carnunus, the horned god, is a male.
not,
Mhm.
No,
not.
No,
the reindeer god is a goddess and she's a female reindeer. To the Sami people, the goddess is a female reindeer.
Could you post something to that?
well, yeah.
That
any
would be
kind of
really good
information or link to
because
that would
I'm
be
trying to
excellent.
explain to people that it's not the green man Carnunos. There is
No.
also the female.
You
But-
have to go
Right.
prehistoric caveman. We're talking caveman.
Yeah, okay.
Sammy and
That works.
I'm
very old.
All right.
people, it's time. We have to stop because we're only supposed to be doing this for an hour.
Oh,
I will.
Chipacon, you have done a wonderful job, but
Oh, yeah. Well, she gives us a place
ran
where
away
so
with
many-
you.
I am.
So many talented people can say so many excellent things.
This is
And
a-
I still, my
Minute.
experience,
okay.
positive experience.
I'm going to have a show on sacred meat and hunting because I think this is going to be an important conversation and I want to have a full hour just for that. Okay. But tonight I'm going to say goodnight and I'm going to that coming up at the beginning of well, I'm going to say goodnight now and stop the recording.